What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Gridiron podcast. And what a week in the NFL it has been, with a lot of head coaching hirings and a lot of openings as well. And then coming off of the AFC NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl being a repeat of 2015 with the Seahawks and the Patriots. So let's get straight into it. So, Mike, let's talk about some of the head coaching hires and openings that are still around. Obviously, we know two teams still do not have a head coach, that being the Raiders and the Cardinals. But seeing some of these hirings as well, just to name the hires that have happened, the Giants hired John Harbaugh as their head coach. Tennessee Titans hire Robert Saleh. Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike McCarthy. Atlanta Falcons, surprisingly, with Kevin Stefanski. The Buffalo Bills promote Joe Brady from the offensive coordinator to the head coaching job. The Miami Dolphins sign Jeff Hafley. The Baltimore Ravens sign Jesse Minter. And the Cleveland Browns get Todd Monken. Now, one that really surprised me was the Falcons getting Kevin Stefanski. We know he's had those on and off seasons with the Browns, and now we're seeing the rivalry just on Twitter alone between Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski. Now they're in the same division. What do you see going forward with this hire? Do you think he can turn the Falcons organization around, or do you think as of right now it's too far gone?
I like Kevin Stefanski personally. I think he is a good coach despite the era he had in Cleveland. That organization is terrible. They are poverty. It is a brutal place to be, and I can definitely see Kevin Stefanski turning this Falcons team around. And yeah, I personally like the hire. He's a good offensive minded coach, and I think he'll run really well with Michael Penix.
Yeah, and one name that we didn't see in terms of the head coaching hires, that being Mike McDaniel. Now, obviously, we mentioned I wanted him to be the Lions OC, and I mentioned last week where it might be a thing where the Lions didn't want to get him because he might be a head coach this upcoming season or the following season. But we see him go to the Chargers as the offensive coordinator to coach under Jim Harbaugh. And his brother, John Harbaugh, got fired by the Baltimore Ravens and went to the New York Giants. The NFC East is going to be a crazy one for sure, especially with the Giants having that young core of Cam Scatterbo, Jackson Dart, and Malik Neighbors once all of them become healthy. And then on the defensive side, Abdul Carter. Having that young core can really turn your franchise around. Do you see a world where potentially the Giants are a playoff team within the next 2 to 3, maybe 4 years?
Oh, easily. Harbaugh brings the team from what were they, 5 wins last season to about eight, depending on their schedule, nine. I know Dart's still young and he's developing, but the thing about Harbaugh and what he did for the Giants actually before signing his contract was instead of reporting straight to the GM, he actually wanted to report to the owner, I believe, or vice versa, one of the two.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, it just shows the professionalism and how serious he takes the job. And for the Giants, I easily see them as going into the playoffs, if not being a contender, with, like you said, those pieces of Neighbors, Scatterbo, the pieces on defense that they have now. I definitely see the Giants as a threat going forward.
Yeah. And then obviously we've seen the stint of Robert Saleh as a head coach with the Jets. He is now the head coach for the Tennessee Titans. Now, there was a lot of question marks around the Tennessee Titans this year. Obviously, having a poverty year, I would say, after having the first overall pick in Cam Ward. It is going to take a lot for Robert Saleh to turn that franchise around. It might be a situation where we see another stint like he had with the Jets, where he didn't really get along with his quarterback. Obviously, that was Aaron Rodgers, and Robert Saleh are like those hard-headed type of people. What they say goes. Cam Ward is obviously a younger player, just finishing off his rookie season. Do you see in any way, shape, or form a difference after Saleh got fired from the Jets and had a stint as an OC? Do you see a world where he fills that role again as the head coach in the way that it really should be run in a way?
I was very confused by this hire because you have Cam Ward, who you just drafted, and he's, in offense, obviously like the quarterback position, but I mean, in terms of he's explosive, offensive minded, like just wanting to make plays, and you hire a defensive coordinator, it just doesn't make sense. But they did help themselves out by hiring Brian Dable. And yeah, I think it's actually interesting because back when Saleh was developing quarterbacks, he had Zach Wilson. So the tenure wasn't very good there. So I wonder what this relationship with Cam Ward will be and how it will be going next season. Because I think Dable definitely does help out a lot. So I think that can, Salah can really worry about the defense. And yeah, the Titans will be an interesting team. Do I see them as a playoff team? Maybe not just yet. They still have a lot of pieces to add. And yeah, they're a young team. So it'll be very interesting, though, I will say.
Yeah, and the last head coaching hire that I want to touch on is the Buffalo Bills promoting Joe Brady to that head coaching job. Now, I saw an interview with the owner of the Bills saying that the firing of their head coach is based on the performance against the Broncos. Now, I would hate to be in that situation where you get fired after multiple people think you got robbed in that game by the refs.
Yeah, I want to ask you, were you surprised by the firing of Sean McDermott?
A little bit. I thought maybe one more year, but obviously he has not made a Super Bowl, and the Bills have the roster to be able to make it to the Super Bowl. Obviously, Josh Allen, former MVP, but the way that he was fired is the thing that really surprised me. That being, he got fired because of the game against Denver.
Yeah, it's brutal. I was very surprised when he got fired, especially after his speech when he said, I'm standing up for Buffalo. How the game was called was not fair. And next, he's fired. I was very surprised.
Yeah, I think it was the very next day after that interview.
Yeah.
And now there's the whole thing with Buffalo being cursed, right? Now, as a Lions fan, I don't know fully if I believe in curses. Obviously, the Lions having the curse of Bobby Lane running from the 1950s, not having the chance to win a championship was essentially the curse. The curse of the Buffalo Bills is a little bit different with the shooting of a former president, William McKinley. Now, it's very odd to say that a football team is cursed because a former president was shot in Buffalo, New York. Now, we've seen games with Buffalo in the playoffs. We've seen it multiple times against Kansas City, and now we've seen it with Denver. Do you see now with Joe Brady, who is former offensive coordinator for the Bills, knows the organization, knows Josh Allen stepping in, do you see them even making a Super Bowl?
That's hard to say, honestly. Every year I want to say yes. Oh, how can it not be the Bills? But then you just watch these playoff games and they're always coming out on the wrong side of almost every single like play that could be 50-50 or it should be clearly this, but they come out on the wrong side and it just turns the game upside down. The game against Denver was super close. Obviously, it was super close, but it came down to a couple plays, a couple penalties, and there it all goes. So it'll be interesting again to see with their schedule. Will they be back in the playoffs? Yes. Can they make it to a Super Bowl? I don't know. It'll just depend on the year. Honestly, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, because obviously they have been to 4 Super Bowls in the past, 4 in a row actually, and lost all 4. That is definitely a crazy thing to say. But going on to the coordinators that have been hired, obviously last week we touched on Drew Petzing for the Detroit Lions, but I also want to mention Mike Kafka has now been hired by the Detroit Lions as a higher offensive staff member. Not quite the offensive coordinator, but he's going to be working alongside Petzing to run that offense. I am completely 50-50 on that hiring because we saw him step in as the interim head coach last year for the Giants, and he did decent. He had a really close game against the Lions, and really down the stretch of the season had some close games. But I'm very 50-50 because he doesn't seem like a person that would run the offense the way that Dan Campbell really wants that offense to be run. So that's why I've been saying for the past couple days since this hiring has come out with Drew Petzing and Mike Kafka that he that Dan Campbell will then be calling plays by week 6 again. Now, I did have Mike Kafka in my top 3 offensive coordinator hires for the Lions, but he was that number 3 spot because realistically there wasn't enough available people to be on that list. And now we see with the hiring of the Chargers for Mike McDaniel as their offensive coordinator, this whole offensive coordinator search for the Lions has just irritated me because you could have gotten a guy like Mike McDaniel who can help you win now. Because I've been saying if you don't do anything this year, your window closes. And what have they done? Nothing. Now it's looking like Alex Anzalone will be going to the Jets to join Aaron Glenn. That's a rumor right now. It's looking like David Montgomery might leave as well. So you're running out of time if you're the Lions. Now, I want to touch on the Green Bay Packers as well, because obviously we saw the loss of their coordinator and becoming a head coach. Now, the Packers have now hired a guy, and this is a very interesting hire, in my opinion, where you guys hired 2 people as well to help run your scheme essentially. And we might actually see Matt LaFleur get rid of the play calling.
Both of those hires, Nick, are for the defense. So we got Jonathan Gannon as the defensive coordinator now, and they also hired today Bobby Balbich from the Buffalo Bills. He was the defensive pass game coordinator for them, and now he's
So
coming over to the Green. Or no, he was the defensive coordinator, excuse me, and now he's the defensive pass game for the Packers under Jonathan Gannon. Now Gannon was interesting because he was not really on my radar as much.
yeah,
And the reason being is I thought he might have been able to get another head coaching spot. But what's interesting is even though his record in Arizona was terrible, back when he was a defensive coordinator back in 21, 22, I believe, for the Eagles, he had top 10 ranked units for the Eagles. And I think that was the year that they went to the Super Bowl as well. And they were ranked number 2, I believe, that year. So I'm actually super excited for both of these hires. And hopefully with Micah Parsons, Evan Williams, guys like that, he can work and pick up where Jeff Halfley left off. because usually with the Packers, it's they fire their defensive coordinator and they're looking for somebody to start all over again. But we're looking to pick up right where we left off.
Yeah, and the reason why I said we might see Matt LaFleur get rid of the play calling, because yes, it is early in the offseason for the Green Bay Packers, and we could see later down the line, once the offseason officially starts for all the teams, we might see pieces moving around where they might hire an offensive coordinator that can actually take the play calls from Matt LaFleur. Because I know all season we've been talking about uh, run play, run play, run play, run play, run play is all the Packers like to run. And we might see something down the line where another offensive coordinator comes up and takes that spot in play calling from Matt LaFleur. Could be very interesting to see. But a lot of different coordinators have come and gone. We are also seeing potentially the loss of Calvin Shepard, but now with Jeff Hafley being hired by the Dolphins, it's looking less likely that Calvin Shepard will be leaving the Lions, as that was mainly the only team that he was interviewing for a head coaching job was the Miami Dolphins. But now we see Jeff Hafley being hired by Miami. It's very interesting to see if Calvin Shepard continues on the ride that he's been on with Detroit. But I do want to touch on another thing that we mentioned last episode with the the Minnesota Vikings. Now, right after we recorded, it was announced that the Vikings have extended Brian Flores, and it happened right after we recorded too, which is very interesting to say the least, because his contract was up, and we mentioned that with Sam Darnold potentially going to the Super Bowl last week, and now he's in the Super Bowl, it looks very bad for the Minnesota Vikings. But this extension is really good in my opinion, because you keep a guy like Brian Flores running your defense. Now, I mentioned something with Harrison Smith last week as well, potentially retiring. It is 50-50 right now. He hasn't announced anything, whether he's returning or retiring at this point. But all right, so we see this with the Minnesota Vikings, and the saying goes defense wins championships. Now, the Vikings had a really good offseason and free agency with the defensive side, and their wide receivers on the offensive side are really the only good thing, because the quarterback play is horrible. The run game is mediocre, and the offensive line has been god awful for the Vikings. Now, I want to get your take on this with the saying defense wins championships. How do you put that into play with the Vikings? Obviously, last year going 14-3, and now this year going 9-8. And they kept a lot of the same defensive scheme with Brian Flores, but upgraded on the defensive side and did worse on the season.
Yeah, unfortunately, it all stems from JJ McCarthy. I think that Brian Flores was a great defensive coordinator. He had the Lions in the pickle. He did some great stuff in the division against the Packers. He's a tough coordinator to play against. He brings blitzes. He brings all sorts of zone coverages at you. He's insane to play against. He honestly, I wish he was on my team at times. But yeah, unfortunately for the Vikings, it's JJ McCarthy. He's the reason why that they went 9-8. The quarterback play just wasn't good enough. And yeah, defense does win you championships. Like we saw it against with Buffalo, right? You got to get a stop, a crucial third down stop, turnover, something. Can't do it. And that Vikings defense, they created turnovers.
Yeah, and let's now go into the AFC Championship game. Obviously, Denver versus New England. It was a snow game, but not as bad as it would have been if it was at Foxborough. But the Patriots come out and win 10-7, very low scoring game. A couple of missed field goals on either side. And they're the Patriots are going to go up against a juggernaut in the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I want to get your take on the AFC Championship game before we go into the Super Bowl predictions, because I think we might be on the same wavelength in terms of who's going to win the Super Bowl, just with recency that has happened in the playoffs. But I want to get your take on the AFC Championship game between the Broncos and the Patriots.
I actually want to ask you this because that Patriots game is a big indicator as to why I think there has to be some sort of regulation on the weather. Because imagine you play all season, you go all the way, and you can't even see the field. You can't even see the field. Who would want to play in that? There is like a level of tough it out in the cold, but this is unplayable. It just sucks. Like your season comes down to you playing who's better in the snow. I don't know what to make of it. The Patriots are a good team. Don't get me wrong, Drake May had a great year. It just sucks for the Broncos, honestly. This was not a game that you could really say this team should have won or that team. It's just who's better in the snow, who, didn't mess up. Sucks.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned it last episode, or I may have talked to you outside of recording, but I saw something where all football fields should have a retractable roof. Now, it will cost a lot of money to do that, but I think once you get into those winter months, like talking November, December, January, where you get that snow, you can close the roof. But once you're in August, September, October, you can open it, because football, in my opinion, has always been like outside in the rain. You think of college football, you have games in the snow, you have games in pouring down rain. But in terms of the playoffs, it has to be regulated to a point where both teams can equally compete. Now, granted, it was in Denver, and Denver is known to snow around this time of year as well. But you got to look at, for example, the Rams versus the Bears, right? The Rams play indoors at SoFi in Los Angeles, where it's 50 degrees at this time of year. And they go to Chicago, where it's 11 degrees, wind is at 35 miles per hour. You have those certain games where you are at a disadvantage if you're not used to it. And in the playoffs, that can end your season real quick. So I think going forward, if it's going to be a bad weather game, you can always have it at a central location, right? You can always have it at places like Hard Rock in Miami. You can have it at the Arizona Cardinals stadium. You can have it at these central locations to avoid those wintry games, because it could really end your season like we saw with Denver.
I guess the flip side to that though would be the home field advantage aspect, and then also what fans are going to go to Arizona, like you said, right? Not many. So I think the only answer is the retractable roofs because I think it also would increase fans going in the winter time. So I think the only way to really have a solution is the retractable roofs. I mean, there just needs to be regulations because watching that wasn't fun.
We saw those missed field goals, a lot of them in normal weather would be easy chip shots. We saw, I believe it was a 25-yard field goal that was missed badly. and we saw a 42-yard field goal that was missed badly. So I think that retractable roof, it would definitely cost more money to have retractable roofs, though.
Yeah, and the next game that you want to talk about was the NFC Championship with the Seattle Seahawks battling it out to the last second against the Rams. I didn't think it would come down to the wire like this. I thought Seattle would put him in the bag, but Matthew Stafford had something else to say.
Yeah, he basically said that they were lucky. And I want to talk about one specific play because when I was watching this play, I didn't know what the call would have been. Talking about the Cooper Cup catch that he fell on his shoulder, dropped the ball. They called it a first down. They didn't allow McVay to challenge the play. They told him that he had to call a timeout to even have any chance of looking at it. So he called a timeout, tried throwing the challenge flag, and at that point it was being reviewed. So then he lost his second timeout and his third timeout in one play. So I do want to mention this because we have seen these bang plays in the playoffs. We've seen it with Buffalo against Denver. We've seen it with the Rams against the Bears. We even saw it with the game, I believe it was Seattle had one play in the divisional round that was kind of bang play that could have really swung the game. And this one gave the Seahawks a fresh set of downs with about 2 minutes left that they were able to run down the clock.
Yeah, I saw the replay of it. I was confused by it. I didn't actually know how they could have called it. It was a first down, right? That's what they said.
They said it was a first down and that he was down on contact.
Yeah, after watching it, I was very confused. I This is where it goes back to I wish the rules were just the rules and there was no replay because now there's this black and gray area. It's not so black and white anymore. Or sorry, gray area. But there's just so much now that goes into it where I even question, do I even know the rules? Like
Right.
I honestly could not tell you anymore because after watching that I was like, there's no way. But somehow replay assist and the refs say otherwise. So I don't know. It's just very interesting. But I gotta say though, this game, besides that one play, I know that was a very critical play. Sam Darnold, I thought he would turn over the football. I said it last week, and he did not. 3 touchdowns, 346. He threw for Jackson Smith-Jigba. He's fantastic.
Yeah, and Cooper Cup gets his revenge on his former team to make it to the Super Bowl, his second appearance in the Super Bowl in his career. Now, we mentioned this before with Sam Darnold. This is a really bad look on Minnesota. So that he is going to be a favorite in the Super Bowl, and you let the guy walk this past season.
Really quick, going back to something you alluded to. Did you know that the Rams wanted Cooper Cup, I think, to retire or to give him the vet minimum?
Yep.
I did not know that. That
I
is,
remember something coming out last year, like middle of the season, that this was going to be a possibility. But I thought it was a prank that was coming out because I've seen a lot of these like fake reports that come out.
yeah.
But now seeing it come back around and it being reported again that the Rams wanted this to happen, it's very questionable on the Rams front office because Cooper Cup, yes, he's been in the league for quite a bit, I would say, but he's not at that age where you're questioning talent, you're questioning health wise. He's not at that point yet. And he went into this NFC Championship game and put up decent numbers, not JSN numbers and not numbers that he put on in 2021 with the Rams, but he put up good numbers. And we've seen this come around a couple times for several teams in the past where they want a player to retire and they don't, and then they go on to another team and face them in the playoffs or face them in the regular season, and they put up good numbers. We've seen this happen multiple times.
Yeah, and totally back to what you were saying about Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, it's not a good look. You had your franchise QB that you drafted. You could have had Darnold start again, but instead you want JJ to start, and now Sam Darnold, he's going all the way. Probably going to win it.
Yeah, and I want to mention one more other key piece of the Seattle Seahawks roster, that being Kenneth Walker III out of my favorite college, Michigan State. Now, I want to mention this because he has been a guy that has been floating around now with his contract being up at the end of the season. I see a world where they re-sign him, but do you see a world where they potentially throw a big bag at him and have to restructure contracts while also trying to retain a guy like Sam Darnold and JSN and their whole defensive core at the same time?
Yeah, I don't think that they'll throw a big bag at Kenneth Walker because running backs right now, the market's pretty low. So I can definitely see another team outbidding the Seahawks. I don't know exactly the number on the top of my head that Kenneth Walker would be looking for, especially if they win the Super Bowl, but I don't see it going too crazy. So I could definitely see another team outbidding, but not crazy numbers.
Yeah, and going into the Super Bowl, which we will be live for you guys, so stay tuned for that live stream. We have a repeat of 2015, that being the Seattle Seahawks versus the New England Patriots at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California. I want your prediction. I feel like we have the same prediction. And I want your Super Bowl MVP prediction.
Oh man, Jackson Smith-Njigba, easy. Score wise, I got Seattle 33, Patriots. I think a little pressure will be on Drake May. I think they won't get anything going till late. I think it'll be 23, 33-23 final score Seattle.
So my prediction for Super Bowl MVP, the toss up between JSN and Sam Darnold. I would say those two. And I would say Seattle 35, New England 18.
Yeah, right there.
And to end you guys off, I want to know where you guys think next. We haven't fully got the announcement of the Super Bowl next year, but I want your guesses on how long the national anthem is going to be for the Super Bowl. I know this has been an ongoing trend for the last couple of years, but I want you guys to let us know how long you think the national anthem is going to be. I'm going to say 35 seconds.
I'll go 38 seconds.
So that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, we are here every single Thursday. Stay tuned for the live stream of the Super Bowl where Mike and I will banter on basically anything that you guys bring up, and we'll be throwing shade at each other throughout the live stream like we did last time. But Seahawks versus Patriots, we will be live on the Super Bowl Sunday, February 8th. And if you guys haven't already subscribed, go ahead and go subscribe. It's free. It'll take you 5 seconds to be able to do that. And if you guys haven't yet also followed our other platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Twitter, go ahead and go follow those as well. And we'll see you guys next time.